All right, well, I believe that I am live right now. If I press the right button, then I am. So welcome everyone, my name is Lior Samfiru. I'm the employment lawyer. Very easy to remember that. What do? I'm an employment lawyer, and I'm here to talk to you, as I do every week, about your workplace rights, to tell you what you need to know about your job, about your legal entitlements at work, what to do if something happened, if you're facing an ultimatum, if your boss did something or said something, if you lost your job, threatened, you name it. This is the time, this is the place to get answers for your questions. I am live, and I'm live taking your questions right now. Ask them. I will answer the questions. So just write the question. I will read them. I will answer them. Now, let me give you some other information. To connect with me off social media or to get more information about your legal rights, not a problem. Here's how you do it. All you do is you go to employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca, the place to go. See the address right here to find out information about your legal rights, to get my email address, my phone number, to connect with me that way, to have a private discussion off air. That's the place you go to. We probably will talk about things today that will trigger something where you want to have a private chat with me. Not a problem. Just go to employmentlawyer.ca. Well, today, of course, is another day where I've been inundated with questions about mandatory vaccines and questions about, can my employer require me to vaccinate, and what does that mean, and how do I respond? So happy to take those questions, and I will answer them as they come today, or about anything. I've spoken with many people also this week already that have lost their jobs, and guess what? With almost no exception, those people that have lost their jobs, the compensation they were offered, the severance they were offered was pennies on the dollars, a lot less than what they're owed. So I'm helping them right now. Do the same thing for you if you lost your job. Chances are you're owed more. But right now, again, my name is Lior Samfiru. Welcome to this session live here. Ask your questions, type them, I'll answer them, and you'll have that information. I'm going to start answering some questions right now. Shelley says, do people need to be vaccinated? I think she's saying, is policy above law? So here's the thing. If the government implements a mandate that you have to vaccinate in your job, etc., then there's not much that you can do about that. On the other hand, if your employer implements a policy and there's no government mandate, that policy may be illegal. But the reality is, if you don't comply, you will lose your job. Okay? So Shelley, you will lose your job if you don't comply with that, but you may be owed compensation because of that. So you may be owed severance and other damages. So the first question you have to ask yourself is not whether it's legal or not. The first question is, am I willing to lose my job? Because you can't physically stop your employer from doing that. So hopefully that answers the question, Shelley. Keep asking questions, guys. This is really good. Next question is from Nikki. Nikki says, my husband works for a township. They are requiring testing for non-vaccinated. They will not cover the cost. So again, not legal. They do have to cover the cost in that situation. Otherwise, it's a constructive dismissal. But the reality is, if your husband doesn't do that, if your husband does say, well, I'm not going to have the test because you're not paying for it, they may suspend him, or they may let him go. Now, he would be owed compensation for sure, okay? But he has to decide whether he's willing to lose his job. But the general rule is, yeah, if your employer is going to mandate that you have undergo regular COVID tests, rapid tests, PCR tests, what have you, they have to pay for it, okay? Next question from Jennifer. I was told I need to get a rapid test twice per week. Do I have to do it? So first of all, by the way, everyone should understand that whatever we talk here only applies to non-union employees. So if you're part of a union, nothing that we talk about today applies to you, okay? Only the union can help you, and your rights may be different. This only applies to non-union employees. But to answer your question, Jennifer, about the rapid test, it's not illegal. That said, if you refuse to do it, unless there's a government mandate in place, and they let you go because of it, they'll have to pay you severance. It's not a human rights violation to require a rapid test. It's not illegal to require it. But if you lose your job as a result of that, if you refuse to do it, then you can, and you'd be owed your severance, no other damages. So again, you have to decide ultimately, are you willing to lose your job? Let's see. Next question, Robin. asks, does the Genetic Non-Discrimination Act not prevent us from being COVID tested? No. This is an important question. The Genetic Non-Discrimination Act, also known as Bill S-201, does not apply. The reason it doesn't apply is because COVID tests are not about your genetic information. They're about the genetic information of the virus. Okay? So you're not providing your genetic information, so it does not apply. There's a lot of misinformation online there. So none of that applies in this situation. There's no law that says you can't be told or asked to have a COVID test. Bill S-201 does not apply. Does not. Let's see. Next question comes from Franklin. My wife is being threatened with losing her job after 12 years. They are giving her no alternative, i.e. testing. We are looking for advice on moving forward. So Franklin, this is something that I've been hearing very often. If your employer chooses to let your wife go, you can't physically prevent that. You can't stop them, restrain them from letting her go. They will let her go if she doesn't get the vaccine. But at a minimum, your wife will be owed severance. And that severance could be as much as 24 months paid, depending on how long she's been there. She could also potentially be owed human rights damages as well. So ultimately, she has to decide, does she get vaccinated and continue working, or does she not, and then loses her job, and I'll help her get compensation. That is up to her. But you cannot stop her employer from letting her go. So I'm sorry that your wife is in that situation, but that's really what it comes down to. Does she lose her job and get compensated? If she does lose her job or is suspended without pay, she needs to call me as soon as possible. And to call me, to connect with me, all the contact information is at employmentlawyer.ca. You see that on the screen right now, employmentlawyer.ca. So Nikki, again, if you're part of a union, you have to talk to the union. Next question from Dill Pickle. From Dill Pickle. What is the window of time you have after being fired from a job to file a complaint or make a claim for wrongful dismissal? 2 years. Okay, so you have a 2-year limitation period. That's it. I don't recommend waiting 2 years. I don't even recommend waiting 2 weeks. Okay, but you have up to 2 years to pursue your matter if you lost your job. It's not 2 years and a day. That extra day, you're too late. So it's 2 years. So thank you for that, Dill Pickle. So let's see, from Scott. Scott works for the government in a union position. Unfortunately, Scott, you don't get severance. You're asking about severance as a unionized employee. Unionized employees don't really get severance in this situation. A unionized employee can get their job back with back pay, but it has to be the union doing it. The union has to file a grievance. There's no other choice. You can't have me help you get severance. You can't have anyone help you get severance. It has to be the union filing a grievance, and if you lost your job, they can get you reinstated with back pay. But if the union won't do it, you don't have too many options, unfortunately. That's part of the issue of being part of a union. Let's see, next question from Levy on Facebook. What happens if part of your job includes the requirement to travel and you cannot get on a plane? So that's a very good point. If you have to travel, but you're not vaccinated, the airline won't let you go on because you're not vaccinated, your employer at that point can say, hey, that's no longer in our hands. That's someone else is preventing that. So because of that, we can let you go with no compensation. So this is very important. If you can't get your job done because someone else is preventing it from happening, your employer can say, hey, we're not making you get vaccinated. We're not stopping you from working. Someone else doing it. It's a kind of a third party. Yeah, it's something that is unavoidable. So the problem with that, Levy, is that your employer may be able to say, well, because you can't do your job, we have to let you go. And because it's not our fault, we don't have to pay you any severance. So that's a very bad situation to be in. If your employer decided, we're not going to let you work because you don't have a vaccine, and they let you go, then yes, you would be owed compensation. But because it's someone else doing that and your employer is not really able to do anything about it, then they may be able to let you go without having to pay you severance. So let's see, next question. Next question from Sarah. Sarah on Facebook. Federal employees, non-unionized, government mandates vaccine. They will likely put those who refuse on leave and will ultimately dismiss. Is this considered dismissal for just cause? So, Sarah, if there's a government mandate, so if you work for right now, if you work for the federal government, not federally regulated, but if you actually work for the federal government, the government said that they're going to implement a mandate saying you have to get vaccinated. If there is a mandate like that at some point and you don't get vaccinated, then yes, your employer potentially can let you go for cause. Now, that said, if you're just a federally regulated employee, let's say you work for a bank, it's federally regulated, but you don't work for the government. In that situation, if you were to lose your job because you're not vaccinated, you're absolutely going to be owed severance. So it's a question of, do you work for the federal government or are you just federally regulated? Those are very different things. So if you want to put in some more information there, I'll be happy to answer that, Sarah. From Sarah Montgomery, also on Facebook, is it reasonable for my employer to request daily testing? That is too far, okay? So that is certainly something that goes too far. If you refuse, that's not something that's going to be considered misconduct. Your employer, if they let you go in that situation, can't say we have a just cause. They'll have to pay you severance for sure. That could be a significant amount. That is going too far. Mary Ann Sterling on Facebook. I've been designated as permanently working from home. Can a company policy still force me to get vaccinated? No, that's nonsense. But again, let's talk. That's the legal answer. The practical answer is that if your employer says, we don't care, if you're not going to get vaccinated, you're out of here, you can't stop that. You can't prevent them from letting you go. But human rights damages potentially, severance for sure. So, but again, that would be silly if you're not even in the office. But again, if your employer does something silly, you can't stop that. You can just deal with it afterwards. Happy to do that. Happy to help you. For those joining us right now, again, my name is Lior Samfiru. I'm founding partner at Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. We're the largest employee side firm in Canada. We operate in Ontario, BC, and Alberta. And I'm here now live taking your questions, answering your questions, telling you what you need to know. So ask them. Still got some time. Let's see. Okay, I'm trying to figure out where I left off. So Fab asks, how much severance will I be owed having 5 years of service? So Fab, I don't know your age and I don't know how what kind of job you had, but it's not going to be less than 6 months likely. It potentially could be 8 or 9, even more if you're senior or worked or have a senior position. So, but it won't be less than 6 months. So Tanya and Nikki asking me about unionized. I cannot help unionized employees. No lawyer can. It has to be the union. Okay, so I don't offer any sessions because all I can tell you in a session is you have to talk to your union. There's nothing else that I can tell you. Tracy asks, aside from severance, what else might your employer have to pay? Potentially human rights damages for discrimination. Those are not large amounts. I want to be very clear. It's not large. 5,000, 10,000, maybe, depending on the case. These are not large amounts. The big amounts, if you will, is the severance. Because again, depending on your length of employment, etc., that could be as much as 2 years' pay. So from Vicky on Facebook, why is it constructive dismissal if an employer does not pay for COVID testing? I would like to be able to defend myself with this point. So because it's introducing a new term of employment, okay? Your employer cannot impose a new financial obligation on you. It's essentially like giving you a pay cut, right? Because now they're going to make you spend this amount of money every week. It's like giving you a pay cut. And an employer does not have a right to give you a pay cut, does not have a right to make significant changes to terms of employment. And because of that, that's what a constructive dismissal is. So, you know, if it was a nominal amount, if you were to spend a couple $100 a year, that's not an important change. But if you're going to spend a couple $100 a week, man, oh man, that's a huge change. So that would be a constructive dismissal for So Steve says, my employer has changed the requirements. They were allowing tests. Now they've taken that option away. So Steve, as I was saying before, ultimately you have to decide, do I get vaccinated and keep my job? Or do I not get vaccinated and lose my job and pursue compensation? You cannot stop your employer from letting you go. They will let you go. There's nothing you can do about that short of getting vaccinated. But if that happens, yes, you are owed severance, potentially other damages as well. You have to give me a call if that were to happen. So Glenn says, can your firm provide legal services to someone in Alberta? Yes, we have an office in Alberta. We provide services across Alberta. We've been busy there like anything. A lot of people contacting us. So we got your back, Glenn in Alberta. Again, to connect with me, to my team across Canada, employmentlawyer.ca. Again, you see it down there, employmentlawyer.ca. Phone numbers are there. Email addresses are there. Forms that you can submit are there. They're all there. So check out employmentlawyer.ca. Next question from Nick. My employer of 4.5 years is mandating the vaccine. I hear some people are getting religious exemptions. So if you have a religious reason and you can get someone from your religious community to support you, a minister, a priest, a rabbi, whoever in your religious community, then yes, your employer may be convinced that it's legitimate. The problem is if you simply say, well, it's my religion, it is what it is, that may not be enough. So you need something to corroborate what you say. And if you can get that, then your employer is going to be doing something very wrong if they just ignore it. So that's how you can get a religious exemption. But most employers are not looking at those very favorably. It's easy to get a medical exemption. I'm not saying it's easy only that if your doctor says that you have a medical reason, your employer is not going to be able to argue with that. Now, your doctor may not do that, but if your doctor is willing to say and gives you a doctor's note saying that you have a medical reason that you cannot get the vaccine, then you're pretty much guaranteed at that point that your employer is going to back off. Let's see. So Nick, you're asking, you've been there for 4.5 years, how much severance? Again, depending on your age and the type of job, it could be anywhere from 5 to 10 months of pay. So by the way, for Nick, for any of you, if you want to find out right now, this second, how much severance you are owed, you can do that now. All you do is you go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. You see that on the screen right now, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. We have our severance calculator tool there. You can find out in seconds, for free and anonymously, how much severance you are owed. So you can go there right now, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Nick, anyone else, you can find out if it's a month's pay, 24 months pay, or anything in between. Easy, free, anonymous. So check it out. From DS on YouTube. If you lose your job, could you sue for more than 24 months compensation for not taking the vaccine? With the severance, does that include benefits and bonuses? So yes, severance includes benefits, bonuses, commissions, car allowance, pension, includes all components of your compensation. Now, I'm not going to be able to tell you what you can pursue until I know more about your matter, but that's something we would assess when we speak privately. I'll tell you what you're owed and how much we can pursue, okay? From Steve on YouTube, I am in healthcare, non-union. Can I request a leave of absence for now, and then nothing improves or changes? Can I pursue severance later? Well, I mean, your employer does not have to give you a leave of absence unless you have a doctor's note saying that you can't work for medical reasons, okay? So if you have a doctor saying, that's fine. Otherwise, you can ask for a medical leave or for a leave of absence, but your employer is not required to give it to you. The concern here is if you don't get vaccinated, if that's your employer's policy, you may be let go. Because as I said, you can't prevent your employer from doing that. It's just a matter of the compensation that you're owed after. Let's see. So Sarah says that she was working for a Crown corporation. Well, the federal government said that they're implementing, for those employees in Crown corporations, a mandatory vaccine policy. It has not yet been implemented, so we have to see and wait and see what the government, the federal government, will do. Now that the elections are over, I'm pretty sure we'll hear about that very quickly. So Jennifer says, what about medical exemption if you can't get one? Well, again, if you can't get one, then there's no medical exemption, meaning you're in the same boat as everyone else, that if you don't get the vaccine and you lose your job, you can't stop that. But your employer is going to have to pay you severance and potentially other damages, potentially human rights damages as well. James has a very long question. James, I have a lot of questions, and I can't read such a long question. So either make it shorter, or you can contact me off air so we can talk specifically and privately. You can contact me, James, through employmentlawyer.ca. Sandra asks, what about the charter? Well, first of all, Sandra, the charter does not apply to your employer, does not apply to businesses. The charter only applies to government action. Okay, so we're talking employment law here, relationships between employer and employees. The charter does not apply. So next question is from Baha on YouTube. I signed a contract with the hospital to start my job, and they requested health assessment, which does not include COVID vaccine, and verbally asked me if I am not vaccinated, I can't start the job. So again, depending, first of all, on what province you're in BC, the BC government announced that to work in healthcare, you have to be vaccinated, okay? In Ontario, that's not the case. So the question is, in terms of whether that's legal or not, depends on the province you are in. BC legal, otherwise potentially illegal. But again, you would have to take a legal action against this hospital, and it's not going to be a simple thing to do considering the fact you haven't worked there. But that is the only option that you have. Can they put, next question is from Sela on Facebook. Sorry if I mispronounced the name. Can they put you on a paid leave? It's been happening a lot. Yeah, an employer can always put you on a paid leave. That's not a bad thing. If they want to pay you not to work, I guess they can do that. The problem is unpaid leave. And unpaid leave is a constructive dismissal, meaning it's not allowed. The law considers that to be a termination, meaning they'd have to pay you severance. So paid leave, if an employer wants to really pay you to do nothing, fine, take it. I'll take it. But if it's an unpaid leave, again, constructive dismissal, it's a termination if you choose to treat it as a termination. Next question, let's see. From Anita on Facebook. Does the employer have to say you are being terminated because of not having the vaccine? At the end of the day, it's either they've terminated or not. If they'll terminate you because of the vaccine, you'll know that. That's not going to be a mystery. If you lost your job, it's going to be clear that you've lost it. It's also going to be clear why, so that shouldn't be an issue. Marissa asks about California. Marissa, we're in Canada, can't help anyone in the States. And nothing that I say applies in the United States. Next question from Jack on YouTube. I work at a Toronto hotel. They say they won't owe severance for no job. Is this possible? No, it's not. I've heard that a lot. They'll have to pay severance. Again, assuming you're not union. If you're union, forget about it. But if you are not union, of course they'll have to pay severance. And depending, Jack, on how long you've been there, they could have to pay up to 2 years' pay. And beyond the severance, there could even be other damages they'll have to pay. So no, that's not true at all. So Sela asks about unpaid leave. I've answered that. Okay. Dill Pickle says, many years ago, I pursued a claim of wrongful dismissal through the labor board. Big mistake, by the way. The case was seen at a first hearing, but no decision made by the arbitrator. I was told I would have to pursue. That doesn't really make sense to me, but if you lost your job, you cannot go to the labor board, you cannot go to the Ministry of Labor. They cannot help you except get only a tiny fraction of what you owed. To get what you owed, you have to call me. If you don't like me, you can contact another employment lawyer, but that's what you have to do. Oh, and by the way, I've said it before, I'll say it one more time here. To contact me, easy. To contact my team, easy. All you do is you go to employmentlawyer.ca. All the contact information is there. Those joining us, that's the contact information, employmentlawyer.ca. To contact me off air, I'm Lior Samfiru, employment lawyer and the head of the employment law practice at Samfiru Tumarkin LLP across Ontario, BC, and Alberta. Okay. Let's see. Alessandro asks, would I consider doing a class action on behalf of deaf people? Class actions in this context, I don't think make a lot of sense. They take years and years. It delays the case. Individual cases are much better. They can resolve quickly, sometimes in a few weeks. So a few years versus a few weeks, no, class actions don't make any sense here. Next question from Bonnie on Facebook. My daughter works in a hospital. They said she has to have the shots. Is there any way for her not to do it? If they don't accept religious or medical exemptions, she does have a heart condition. So first of all, if she's part of a union, I can't help her, can't even advise her. It has to be the union. If she's not part of a union and she has a heart condition, and because of that heart condition, she can't get the shot, she has to talk to the doctor. It's not up to me to say if the heart condition impacts the vaccine or not. If the doctor says that it is, then the hospital is going to have to abide by it. If they don't, have her call me right away. If she loses her job, have her call me right away. But again, this all assumes, of course, Bonnie, that she's not part of a union. From Jesse, I work for a telecommunications company in Alberta. My work has been hounding me to disclose my vaccination status. I've looked on their websites. It says voluntary. Do I have to disclose? Well, the question is not do you have to disclose. The question is what happens if you don't? And I can't answer that. If your employer says, we're going to fire you if you don't disclose, they'll fire you. We can't stop that. They'll owe you compensation, other damages as well. So what you have to understand is the consequences you have to be comfortable with. Because the fact that something may be illegal doesn't mean that you can stop it. It's going to happen. So you have to understand from your employer what happens if you don't disclose so that you can make an informed decision. From Franklin on Facebook, if my wife decides to get fired and sues for severance, can she work another job at a new company? Sure, she can, absolutely. It's a question of will another company hire her, but yeah, absolutely she can. Next question is from Drew on YouTube. Just coming in late here, are you able to provide counsel to members of a police service with an association? No, unfortunately, it has to be your union, your association. From Ultra, without a public health order in BC, can an employer require weekly rapid testing? Well, they can and cannot. What I mean by that, it's not illegal to require it, but if you refuse and they let you go because of it, they would have to pay you severance. Okay, so it's not illegal, but there's still consequences for an employer that fires someone in BC for not getting that shot or not getting the test. Let's see. Okay, I'll take a couple more questions. From Lori, how long can they leave you on a leave of absence until they owe you severance? Lori, they don't have a right to put you on a leave of absence at all, period, not even on 1 day. So if they put you on a leave of absence, on day 1, you can treat that leave of absence as a termination and require your employer to pay you severance. There's no time limit. You can do that on day 1. It's up to you. You either accept the leave of absence or you consider that as a termination and require your employer to pay you severance. If you want to get severance, they're not going to pay it. They're not going to, if you ask for it, they're not going to pay it. I would have to get involved. Not a big deal, not a complicated process, but you'd have to give me a call. And to give me a call, employmentlawyer.ca. So Troy says, so a second party, a non-employer, is forcing vaccine to work for them or with them. Do you have no rights? Well, you could potentially file a complaint against that other party, but you're going to lose your job with no severance. So you don't have a lot of rights in that situation because your employer can put up their hand and say, it's not us. We don't really care if you're vaccinated or not. It's those guys, they're saying you can't work on their property. So not a good situation to be in. Okay, let's see. So again, the question about Bill S-201 does not apply. Does not apply. We talked about that earlier. Question from Washington State. Can't talk about the United States because it doesn't apply. We're in Canada. Let's see. Take one more question. Next question, last question I'll take from Vicky. Do human rights damages an employee may be eligible for include reinstatement of their position, and how likely would that actually be? Great question. So in theory, yes, the Human Rights Tribunal can reinstate. That almost never happens. It's very unlikely. It's only a question of damages. It's possible, very unlikely. Usually there's no reinstatement in human rights issues. Guys, our time is up today. And I know there's a lot more questions, but I'm not going anywhere, okay? I'm not leaving the country. I'm not going on vacation or even turning off my computer. To connect with me now, if you want to continue this discussion, just go to employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. You'll see email addresses, phone numbers. All the contact information is there. You can talk to me privately, send an email. I'll respond. My team will respond. We'll connect with you. So no worries. Any other employment issue, let's not forget about those other issues: constructive dismissal, harassment, bullying, wrongful dismissal, severance, you name it, we're the place to go to, employmentlawyer.ca. I'll be back next week, same time and same place, but don't wait until then. Reach out in the meantime to employmentlawyer.ca. Thank you, everyone. I know this is a stressful time. Hopefully I've answered some of your questions. We'll talk again soon.